Hi, Glenn here. I'm going to build something for the purpose of building other things. I'm building a tool, kind of. I've always wanted a router sled used to flatten things like slabs of wood or, well, just slabs of wood really. And I have the parts for it here. Hopefully I have enough parts for it. I'll find out soon. But first of all, I've had to make a little bit of space in my workshop, and I'll build the table, and then I'll come right back to you. I had a rethink of the location for the table that I'll build the router sled on, and I've decided this is a bit better because I've only just recently cleared this space in my workshop and I don't want to lose it again. And besides, if I'm making big things like dining tables, I want a good space for assembly. So over here it is. Now there's the frame. I'm going to shave a little bit off one or two of these legs, but that's basically it. The top is kind of a torsion box. A frame designed for maximum rigidity with the timber that I had. This uses it up pretty much. And there's some further progress. I'm just skipping through the build of the table because it's just a table. I've got the rails unpacked and they're just sitting in place. I was thinking about how much elevation they need, because at this height, I couldn't route anything of any serious thickness. But before I know what that height will be, I'm going to first of all build the sled part that the router will sit in based on the dimensions of the base plate of my router. So I'll make these cuts and put this together, and once I've got it sitting in place, I'll know how much I need to raise it up by. Well, you live and learn. I quite liked this cradle that I've made, but I realise now that I needed to make it a fair bit wider, because although it accommodates the base perfectly, I can't lower it all the way as far as I would like to, because these things get in the way of the handles. So I'm going to make a wider one. Okay, I've made a bigger sled. Now I need to put the holes in here so that the pillow bearing can be attached underneath. I did think about getting clever and getting some paper and making a tracing, but I think it should be pretty straightforward. That's better. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just as well, this is wood, so you don't have to be like laser precise. There is a tiny bit of give in it, but you're going to have to be pretty much accurate. Okay, I will do all the others. That'll take a while. I'll come back soon. Well, I'm more of a woodworker than a precision engineer, so I had to come back with my hand drill, and I shall generously say that I finessed the holes, which is to say that I wiggled the bit around, made them a little bit larger and misshapen, so that now the machine screws will go in. Just set that on there for now. Okay, so it took a lot of tweaking. I ended up drilling all the holes that I made ever so slightly larger, just to give me some wiggle room. And then once everything was moving as it should, I tightened it up. And now it's working good. The rail's not secured to the table yet, and I won't do that just yet because I'm going to have to elevate everything because that's not much height. How much routing height do I have? Okay, so I've only got there about 53, 54 millimeters, which is enough, to route a guitar body, but it's not much. Now, what if I want to, as I probably will, flatten something as large as this big chunk of cedar? Although I won't actually want to flatten that because it's already quite flat. Now that is... Okay, so that's about 90 mils. Yeah, so I really want a height of about 95 millimeters there. So what did I say that was? That was about 53, 54. Okay, so I'm going to want just over another 40 mils. Alright, I'll have a look around my workshop and see if I can find some wood to put under these rails, and I'll come back when I've found it. Just make sure that it can move freely all the way down. Things out of the way. Okay, so things are obviously nice and parallel. I will now... Let me just check how much height I've got. Alright, so that gives me, about 105 millimeters with like 1 or 2 millimeters between the surface of the slab below and the sled. Now you might be thinking, well, if you've got it raised up so high, how will you route anything? How will you flatten anything that's not very thick, like say just 50 mils? Well, and I won't try anything dodgy like have the bit barely inserted into the router because that could go pear-shaped rather easily. But all I'll do is I'll put some sheets of something, MDF or plywood, under the piece that I'm flattening and raise it up closer to the bit, so that'll be easy. Alright, it's I think this calls for button head screws. Yes, I think so. Right. Oh, one more thing. This kit rather handily came with these machine screws and washers, and the point of these is to stop things from sliding off the end of the rail. This will block a pillow bearing from sliding off the end, which is jolly handy. I'll demonstrate in just a moment. And no further. There we are, just in case you get over exuberant and give the sled a push, it won't end up on the floor. Okay, so I'll put these stoppers on the ends of all the rails now and clear this table off. It's Friday evening now, this weekend sometime. I'll give this thing a whirl, see what it can do. Come back soon. Does that make sense? I'll come back soon. Alright, so it's the next day. Before I debrief and talk about all the features that I haven't discussed already, if there are any, let's give this thing a try. So this is a chunk of walnut. It's a small walnut slab. When we first moved into our previous address in Upper Hutt, before we moved here to Carterton, there was a little bit more than a stump, part of a walnut tree remaining. It was about that tall. Yeah, there was more than that actually. Maybe about as tall as me, yeah, because I remember a cat standing on top of it. And we wanted to get rid of that and build a garden shed, which I did, but my father-in-law came along with his chainsaw and cut out some slabs, because I thought they would be rather nice. So I'm going to flatten one of those. Now this one is particularly rugged. You probably can't see from where you're standing just how rugged it is. So it's got features like ginormous ridges and whatnot. And it is slightly too thick, being so rugged for the height of the router sled. Most, generally speaking, slabs won't be quite this rough and thick. But this one is what it is, and rather than try to temporarily build this thing up higher, I'm just going to rough it down to a slightly more manageable size by taking off the more rugged features with this electric hand planer, which I'm loving. I've been playing with it lately. So let's do that. Okay, so I'll eventually get there, but I'm thinking to myself, maybe I really should raise this up a little bit more, because who knows? Maybe I'll end up with a bunch of rough pieces like this, and spending all this time with an electric planer. It's like, well, this is really why I got a slab flattener jig sorted out. So I think I'll need to raise this up another, 30 millimeters to give myself plenty of space, which is annoying because it means dismantling things, but okay, look, I'll do that because it'll make my life better. And look, now I know that my height expectations were perhaps not realistic. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Right, I think I said 20 or 30 mils. I went with another 50 mils just to say to myself, hey look, this is going to be more than I will ever need, because I don't want to get to a point where I've got something that's just a few millimeters beyond the new limit, and so I have to add more. And it's easy to prop wood up, to put sheets of MDF or plywood or just 2x4s or whatever underneath to raise up the level. So that's what I've done. Okay. And incidentally, you may know this if you're woodworkers, but some wood is toxic. What I do with the wood that I gather up is that I sell it to people for their chickens or for their gardens. And if I'm going to be doing that, I won't be selling them walnut. So I will empty my dust collector before I do a job like this involving walnut. And then once I've finished the job, bag up the walnut waste separately. And that's because walnut is quite poisonous. Well, certainly to other plants anyway. I know because at the previous address, when we cut the remainder of this stump down and had a lot of walnut sawdust, we threw it on the garden and killed a palm tree. Well, a small succulent kind of palm tree, I don't know what it was called. And then I did some Googling and discovered, hey, actually walnut's not too good for other plants. So there you go, be careful. Right, plenty of clearance now. I'll get a sheet of plywood, put it under here, and then we will be in business. This is the bit that I've got for slab flattening. It takes carbide teeth, and you can get replacements. In fact, it came with 3 replacements. It should do a decent job. Let's see how we go. Alright, we're ready to rock. Speaking of rocking, and that wasn't planned, the whole thing was rocking quite a bit because it's not flat on either side. So what I've done is taken some little strips of plywood and used them as a shim based on the way that I want it to sit, basically. And now it's not rocking, so let's just do this. Now I'm gonna try to resist any temptation to take too deep a bite initially. Just take very shallow passes, until I get the feel of this, and even then, still take shallow passes. It's quite a large bit, so I'm going to turn the speed down. So that's probably a bit deep. There we go. If it seems like I'm being very cautious, it's because I am. Never done this before, so I'm just stopping to take a look to see how we're going. Getting a feel for the sort of resistance that this gives me, because it's not a type of routing I've ever done. Now the bit, I wanted to grab my phone to show you, but it's over there serving as my B camera. The bit's making a very clean cut, I'm impressed. Just got the bit set to a height that it's just touching the very tallest bits. So I'm just doing a bit of a search to see where there are other bits at this height, other parts of the wood at this height, before I lower the bit further. I can see that I'm going to have to move my slab. Now the table is only 1.5 meters long, and because of the way the cradle sits, I can't route pieces that are the full 1.5 meters length. But, you know, I can have a much longer slab here with the end hanging off and then move the whole thing through. So I can do larger pieces than this table might suggest at first glance. Well, I've learned a lot already. First lesson, use a powerful router. Now this router is a bit of a workhorse. It's only 1200 watts, which is not huge, and it's destroyed all the work that I've thrown at it in its life until now. But this is definitely its biggest challenge. It's moving around a very large bit, and it's finding this work quite hard, which leads to the next point. Move slowly. Avoid the temptation to try to route off lots quickly. If I move slowly across, very slowly, then it doesn't stutter and stall. It seems to do okay. Obviously very shallow passes. The other thing is, I'll continue to use this router for now, but ideally don't use a plunge router that requires you to constantly hold the button down in order to have the motor running, because it will give you a bit of fatigue, because that means that always having to be squeezing the trigger, even when you're out here, and never being able to let it go. It would be easier, I think, to have a router like my Triton, where you can switch it on and then not have to hold the button down. So these are things that I'm learning as I go. It is doing a great job though. It's just going to take a while. It's not going to be a fast job, but it will do a good job. I do have some slightly smaller bits than this, which are also designed for flattening, but which aren't as large. I think they would give my router an easier time. And even though they're smaller, they might make the job go quicker, just because of how much better the router performs. So this is producing a great result. I'll show you the result. I know you can't feel that, but the passes are very smooth. That's the pass I'm doing at the moment. That's where I haven't got to. But I am going to try my other bit, which is a less ambitious bit in terms of the size of it, just to see if that gives me an easier job. Right, that's the bit that I'm currently using, and I think that's the bit that I will continue to use. It's a style of bit called a bottom cleaner, because it cleans the bottoms of channels with that flat blade along the end, and it's a little bit easier. I feel like the router is struggling less with that large bit spinning. As soon as you press a button, you start to get the feeling of, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. This feels like a lot, and you don't get that so much with this bit. And it is still quite a nice finish. Yeah, of course it's going to have to be sanded afterwards. Now, bear in mind, I'm cutting off a lot. That's maybe 4 millimeters depth there. And that's more than some people would say that you should cut off in one pass. It's just that I'm dealing with this, and ideally you wouldn't be. Ideally you'd start with something that's a little bit tidier than that. But I'm happy with this. I will continue to struggle on. This will require lots and lots of passes. It's all learning. Ideally I would have a more powerful router for this, because it would be nice to be able to more comfortably use a larger bit like that. But we use what we've got. So for now, I'll continue to use this. I may make a new cradle and try out my more powerful Triton router in there at some point, but this is good for now. So that's how it was done. You might want to know, where did I get these rails? Yeah, as I say, I got it as a kit. So I live in New Zealand. For those in New Zealand, just go onto our website, trademe.co.nz, which is kind of like a marketplace website, and search for router sled or search for linear rails. They both appear in the name of the listing, and you'll find the guy who sells kits of these. So this represents 2 kits. One kit is the long rails, and they come with the bearings and the end washers, and another kit is just a kit of slightly shorter rails, and well, they're easy enough to join together. Yeah, super convenient. It took a lot of the work out of it for me. I didn't have to wonder about which parts would be the right ones. They were all together. I'm going to use this a lot because I've got a bunch of slabs in my wood storage area, so I'm going to be focusing on technique, on the best way to approach this. Fortunately, they're not all as rough as this, so this one's going to take longer than most, even though it's not that large. But that's it. I'm going to have fun with this. If you make one, I'm sure you'll have fun as well. Super useful things. I'm inspired a lot when I watch Blacktail Studios on YouTube. If you watch him, you'll know what I mean. He makes enormous slab tables. I don't aspire to do anything quite that grand in terms of scale, but that's where I got the inspiration. I thought, yeah, I'd like to make slab tables too. Well, now I will, and you can too. Take care. I'll be back soon.